This story isn't for views, it's a tough lesson in trust, boundaries, and knowing when to walk away. Learn from their mistakes so you don't repeat them.
The moment I hit send, I told myself it was nothing, just a simple text, just a week to breathe, to work late, to untangle whatever this mess with Aaron had become. He knew Tasha, knew we were close. I figured the vagueness would slide by. His reply came seconds later. One word, okay. No question mark, no follow-up, no emoji or love you too. Just cold, clean acknowledgement. I stared at the screen longer than I cared to admit, thumb hovering, half thinking maybe I should have softened it, but then he always played it cool, always trusted me, maybe that's what made it worse. Still, I slept fine that night, maybe too fine. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. The next morning, I drove to work like usual, parked 2 blocks from Aaron's place, habit not caution, and walked in through the side door like I'd done twice already that month. He met me in the hallway, grinning, shirt half buttoned like he didn't expect me so early. "I thought you said tomorrow," he joked, kissing my cheek like we were just a couple late for brunch. I shrugged it off, told him I had a rough night and needed the distraction. We didn't talk much about my husband. Aaron never asked. I think he preferred the silence. It made things cleaner in his mind. But later that afternoon, something shifted. Around 2:15 p.m., I checked my phone and noticed the shared location dot had vanished. Not no location found, not offline, just gone. I refreshed the app twice. It wasn't a glitch. Then I opened our shared bank account, logged in from the office bathroom, the tile cold under my heels. I didn't expect much, just wanted to check if he'd paid the gas bill like we talked about. But the account was nearly empty, not zeroed out, just neat, precise. His half moved out, my half untouched. That's when the silence started to hum in my ears. Not panic yet, but something deeper, an itch under the skin that wouldn't go away. By evening, I texted him again. "Hope your day went okay." No response. And back at Aaron's, when I mentioned it in passing, he just raised an eyebrow and asked if I wanted wine. I said yes, but my hand shook when I reached for the glass. I had no idea that across town in our kitchen drawer, a folder already sat, neatly labeled, paper-clipped, and waiting. I woke up to the sound of someone dragging a suitcase downstairs. Not loud, just that soft mechanical pull over hardwood. I thought maybe Aaron had left early for the airport or a client meeting. But then I remembered it was Wednesday. No trips this week, no clients in town. And Aaron never used the old suitcase from the guest room closet. When I stepped into the hallway, the bedroom door was opened. Bed made. His watch was gone from the nightstand. The drawer where he kept his passport sat ajar, empty. The top shelf in the hall closet, where he stored all his little essentials in a blue canvas bag, was stripped clean as I went to the kitchen, heart crawling now. There was a folder on the marble counter, simple manila, nothing dramatic. Just one line typed across the cover, "Notice of intent to dissolve marriage, preliminary draft." Below it, in his handwriting, sat a note I read 3 times before I could breathe again. "Since you're staying with a friend, I figured I'd start packing." No anger in the words, no scribbled fury or crossed out regrets, just quiet, surgical removal. I grabbed the folder and flipped it open, hoping, what, that it was fake, a bluff. Inside were dates, bullet points, even a property list. He'd included a column titled "Already Removed," with check marks beside entries like birth certificate, marriage license copy, safe deposit box key, and attic lockbox. He hadn't just packed, he'd prepped. I checked the garage, his car was gone, so was the tool chest. And the white bins labeled "Important Docs Do Not Touch" that I used to tease him about. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. For some reason, I opened the fridge next. The top shelf was cleared, except for one thing, the glass container where he kept his homemade soup, still full, untouched. And then it hit me. He didn't make it this week. He'd been preparing, not reacting, and that realization felt colder than any argument we'd ever had. I sat at the kitchen table for a while, phone in hand, folder in front of me, trying to steady my breathing. The silence wasn't punishment, it was strategy. He wasn't chasing, he wasn't checking in. He was done playing the part. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past the window. It stopped at the curb. I watched it idle. Then a man stepped out, holding an envelope addressed to Aaron's lawyer. I pulled into the underground garage like always, pressed my key card to the reader, and waited for the familiar green light. Nothing, just red. I tried again. Same result. For a moment I stood there, blinking at the scanner like maybe it hadn't registered. I pressed the call button for the front office. "Hi, this is Nicole Anders, Unit 703. My card's not working." A pause, then the manager's voice came through, clipped. "Yes, ma'am. We received notice of lock changes and new access permissions. You'll need to speak with Mr. Anders." He didn't even say, "Your husband." I backed away slowly from the panel, hands trembling despite the warm air. I could still smell the leather from Aaron's old seat covers. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't try to buzz the door. Instead, I sat in the car and opened the banking app on my phone. Balance $6,142.09, not zero, but half of what had been there yesterday. The account activity showed 2 internal transfers, one to a trust account I didn't recognize, and the other a prenup disbursement in Anders, my name, cold, automated. He'd frozen the joint funds. Left only what I was legally entitled to. That was the moment it shifted from panic to something else, something quieter and far more dangerous. He wasn't slashing tires. He wasn't smashing plates. He was cleaning the board. I drove aimlessly for an hour before pulling into the coffee shop near Aaron's office. I just needed to see his car, to remind myself he was still flesh and bone, not this calculating ghost I didn't recognize, but his parking spot was empty. At 9:41 a.m., a text came in from Tasha. Nicole, why are there legal papers on Aaron's front porch, and why is your name on them?" I stared at the screen, confused. My heart dropped into my stomach. I called her. "You mean my porch?" "No, his. I'm house sitting for Aaron, your boss, the one you're supposedly not staying with. A courier just left a manila envelope with your name on the front and something about dissolution proceedings." The silence between us crackled. She exhaled. Nicole, what the hell did you do?" I didn't answer. I was already pulling away from the curb, racing nowhere, hands slick on the wheel. The address on the envelope wouldn't be ours. It would be his. Aaron had sent the papers to my boss's house, the same one I'd been crashing at. He knew. He'd known for days. And now he'd made it known, without saying a single word. By the time I reached the edge of downtown, the buzzing started. One ping, then another, then a string of alerts so fast it made the screen flicker like a seizure. I pulled into a loading zone, threw the car in park, and stared at the notifications stacking up. First, from Aaron, then the lawyer's office, then, worse, HR. Call logs showed 57 missed calls. Voicemails filled the box. There were texts, too. Rapid fire, jumbled, some begging, some angry, all unanswered. The one that landed hardest wasn't even a paragraph. It was a video. I hesitated, heart hammering before pressing play. It was me, in the bathroom of Aaron's house, eyes red, voice shaky. "Please, don't do this, not like this. We can talk. I made a mistake. But you're..." I broke off mid-sentence like even I couldn't believe what I was saying. I didn't remember recording it. Then I noticed the timestamp. It had auto-sent from a backup account I hadn't used in years, some relic from our shared iCloud days. Aaron had set it up when we first moved in together to keep things simple. I never disabled it. He hadn't either. Somehow, that stung the most. Not that he'd watched, but that he'd waited, listened, archived. And now he wasn't replying, not once. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I messaged Tasha, no reply. I even texted Aaron's mother, whom I hadn't spoken to since last Thanksgiving when I worked late instead of flying out with him. She left me on red. The only thing that responded was silence, and the system he'd clearly spent weeks, maybe months, building beneath my feet. At 10:14, I opened his calendar from the old shared desktop app, hoping for a crack in the door, a meeting, a trip, anything. One entry stared back at me. Final delivery 9:30 a.m. Address Waverly Heights, Gregson. Aaron's boss, my boss. The man I told myself didn't count, that it was just comfort, that it was temporary. Aaron had known. He'd tracked the address, the timings, the business dinners, and weeknight strategy sessions. And instead of confronting me, he sent the papers there, made me explain it to someone else, made me visible. That was the part I couldn't breathe through. He didn't scream. He just erased me from his life, strategically, surgically, and in full view of everyone who mattered. And now, I was the one calling, the one pleading, the one left on red. The envelope was thick, too thick for good news. I found it on the front stoop when I got back from work, half soaked by the sprinkler system, my name printed cleanly in bold block letters across the front. No return address, but I didn't need one. I already knew who it was from. I stood there for a long moment, shoes still on, key still in the door, fingers frozen at the edge of the flap. Some part of me hoped it was a warning, or maybe even a peace offering. Maybe he wanted to talk, settle this quietly, be human again. Inside was the deed. The house was mine, and so was everything attached to it. There was a second folder inside the envelope, neatly tabbed, with a pale blue post-it marking the beginning of what looked like an expense summary. At first glance, it felt generous. Clean title, clear transfer, a notarized signature from him, dated the day after our wedding anniversary. But then I flipped the pages. First, property taxes past due from 3 years back. He'd been covering them quietly, not from our joint account, but his own reserve. There was an annotation, deferred until transfer, unpaid. Next, 2 estimates from roofing companies, $12,400 and $14,600 respectively. Photos attached. Water damage from last winter apparently worsening. I remembered asking if we needed to get it checked. He'd said, "It's handled." It had been. Until now. The plumbing report came next. Then the HOA violation notices, 6 in total. Most minor, but one serious. An unapproved extension built before I moved in, flagged for possible removal. Taped to the final page was a note on Aaron's lawyer's letterhead. Just one line, typed plainly. Ownership accepted by continued residents. No signature, no apology, no flourish. Just a confirmation that by living here, by not contesting, not vacating, I had assumed it all. I sank into the hallway chair, envelope in my lap, hands trembling. It should have been a win. I got the house, didn't I? The place we picked out together with the red oak floors and the antique handles I insisted on. But now every creak in the wall, every leaky faucet, every email from the HOA was a sentence, a bill, a weight. I thought he left me with nothing, but he left me with exactly what I'd clung to. The house, and every crack in its foundation. I wasn't even looking for him. I was scrolling during a slow meeting, half listening to Gregson fumble through another weak synergy pitch when the notification popped up on my phone. I almost didn't tap it, but the name caught my eye. Caleb Huang. We'd both worked with Aaron back at Ridgeway Analytics before the reorg. The post was short, celebratory, nothing dramatic. Proud to welcome Aaron Anders as Director of Strategic Risk here at Virion Group. His reputation speaks for itself. Excited for what's ahead. Beneath it, a photo. There he was, buttoned down crisp, tie off, relaxed, rooftop skyline behind him, arm resting lightly on a chair, drink in hand. His smile looked real, unforced, clean, lighter than I'd seen it in years. But it was the details that knocked the wind out of me. No ring, no tired eyes, no clutter in the background. Just him, standing beside a small team of equally polished faces, laughing like the past 12 years had never happened. I stared at it longer than I should have. Zoomed in, tried to find cracks. But there weren't any. The caption didn't mention me, of course, or the mess, or the papers, the house, the fallout. Just progress. When I clicked on his profile, I found the timeline neat and clear. Moved cities 3 weeks ago, joined the firm 2 weeks later. It was like he'd timed it to perfection, like he'd been waiting for the exact moment I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't matter. I refreshed the page twice, hoping it would glitch, but there he was, endorsed, welcomed, reshared by people I barely knew, but whose names still pinged old memories. People we used to invite for dinner, people who now commented, "Great hire, knew you'd land somewhere solid, power move," and not one of them mentioned what he'd just gone through, because he hadn't gone through it. He'd moved past it. Meanwhile, I was still fielding quiet stares at the office, still pretending the house felt like home, still explaining why Gregson wasn't really involved, still holding the pieces. I closed the app, but the image stayed with me. It wasn't about who he was with, it was who he'd become without me. And for the first time, I realized I hadn't just lost him. I'd been replaced by stillness, by clarity, by peace. I didn't even know why I went. The email had floated through my inbox 3 days prior, some industry event, invite only, Virion Group's official launch in the new city. I clicked the RSVP link without thinking, half out of spite, half out of something else. Hope, maybe. The rooftop venue was sleek, all glass and metal and soft jazz. Everyone wore tailored lines and curated confidence. I watched for him over the rim of my wine glass, scanning the crowd for that familiar tilt of his head, that half smile he used to wear when he was watching the room instead of trying to dominate it. I saw him just past 8. He hadn't changed much, except he had. The way he stood straighter, the way people circled around him like planets, orbiting someone who wasn't trying to impress, just present. I took a step forward, then another, until a man in a black suit with a subtle earpiece stepped in my path. "I'm sorry, miss. Do you have your wristband?" I blinked. No, but I'm not a stranger. I know Aaron. He'll vouch. Name, please." "Nicole Anders." I almost said his wife, but my voice caught. He tapped something into a tablet, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, you're not on the list." I tried again, this time louder. "Aaron." Heads turned. Conversations paused. And then through the shifting bodies I saw him. He stepped away from the bar, blazer buttoned, cool wind tugging gently at his cuff. His eyes met mine, steady, unrushed. "Aaron," I said again, lower this time, "please." He came close enough that I could smell the faintest trace of the cologne I used to buy him every Christmas. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked at me like a question already answered. "You're not on the list," he said, voice low, professional. I laughed once, bitter, sharp. "I was your wife," he nodded, past tense, then turned and walked away. Not with cruelty, not even finality, just fact. I stood there, heat rising to my face, hands trembling at my sides. People had already gone back to their glasses and toasts. The music didn't pause. The world didn't pause. Only I did. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel until then. He didn't just remove me from his life. He redefined it, without me in it. I first heard it from the woman in payroll, of all people. We were in the elevator alone, her thumb tapping impatiently against her phone as the floors ticked up. Just as the doors slid open on 6, she turned and said, "So, Gregson's out, huh?" I blinked. "What?" She stepped out, shrugged like she hadn't just detonated a bomb. "Placed on leave," they said. "HR's crawling all over his files. Whole department's under review." Then she disappeared down the hall before I could ask anything else. I stood there, alone in the elevator, throat tightening. Gregson. On leave. When I reached my desk, there were already 3 internal emails in my inbox flagged as urgent from compliance. Nothing explicit, just reminders about disclosure policies, digital footprint procedures, personal relationship guidelines. I opened the company Slack and found a locked channel I'd never seen before. Jar HR internal review, GR, locked, private. My name not on the participant list. The anxiety hit like a second skin. Clammy. Suffocating. I texted Gregson. No reply. I tried his assistant. She sent back one line. "He's unavailable this week. All inquiries to HR." I knew what that meant. I'd seen it happen to others. Sudden silence, immediate distance, like a switch flipped and they no longer existed in the system. I shouldn't have been surprised. We hadn't exactly been subtle. Too many late nights with overlapping logins, too many meetings rescheduled last minute, and worst of all, the digital trail we both pretended didn't matter. Shared rides, overlapping IP addresses, security logs from the condo building. I thought I was careful. He said he was. Then I remembered the calendar entry Aaron had left visible, the one with the 9:30 a.m. delivery, Gregson's address typed cleanly underneath. I'd assumed it was just about me, about our marriage. I hadn't thought he'd go further, but Aaron never played at surface level. If he had files, timestamps, location logs, if he documented the overlaps, mapped the patterns, HR hadn't discovered this. They'd been given it, and not by accident. I called Aaron again. Straight to voicemail, I texted, "Please, just talk to me." No reply. By Friday, Gregson's parking pass had been deactivated, his name removed from the company's org chart. The whispers grew louder, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the fallout wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't recognize it at first. The lighting was warmer than I remembered, the table linens darker, the bar rearranged to make space for a wine wall, but as the host led us toward the private room at the back, something in my chest tightened. Then I saw the corner booth, same curved leather, same flickering sconce overhead. We'd celebrated our 3rd anniversary there. Aaron had surprised me with a tasting menu and a handwritten card that said, "Here's to building more than a life. Let's build a legacy." Now, a decade later, he was back. Not with me, but with 10 sharply dressed professionals raising glasses around a long table, laughing like the future already belonged to them. I stood frozen near the entrance, waiting for the client I was supposed to meet. Tasha was beside me, mid-sentence until she saw him too. Her breath hitched. Is that Aaron?" He looked up, met my eyes. No shock, no hesitation, just calm acknowledgement, as if he'd seen me the moment I walked in and chose this exact moment to raise his glass. He nodded slightly, then turned back to his table. Tasha muttered something and veered toward the bar. I stayed rooted. I watched him lean into a conversation with a woman 2 seats down, nodding, thoughtful. I watched someone clap him on the back. A waiter brought over a bottle, and he reached for it, pouring with the ease of someone who owned the night. The same waiter who'd served us once upon a time passed by my side and smiled faintly, polite but not recognizing me. Of course he didn't. I'd been erased. A voice to my left asked, casually, "You here alone?" I turned. A man in his 50s, dark blazer, neutral expression. A potential investor, I realized. "No," I said, recovering, "meeting a client." He nodded, scanning the room, then added, "That's quite a group over there. You know any of them?" Before I could answer, I heard the question from another direction, this time from a young woman holding a flute of champagne. "Are you married?" It was nothing. Polite chatter. The kind of question people ask without meaning anything. But something in me snapped into place. I smiled. "I was," I said softly, meeting Aaron's glance across the room as he listened. Calm, unmoved. Then I got serious. And just like that, the moment flipped. Not bitter, not loud, just final. He reclaimed the night, and I finally understood. He hadn't come to revisit the past. He came to bury it, quietly, elegantly, and permanently. It arrived on a Monday. No return address, no company logo, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen since she used to leave grocery lists folded next to my coffee mug. The envelope was pale cream, heavier than standard, no perfume, no smudges, just 5 words, written with careful pressure. "Can we talk? Please." Inside a single sheet. She'd written more, not much, but enough. "You never even raised your voice. You never yelled. You never asked why. I know I deserve the silence, but I can't make sense of how fast you disappeared. I miss the sound of your keys in the door. Just, if there's anything left, tell me." I sat with it for a while. The letter, the weight of it. I read it once, then again. Then I took out my phone, typed slowly, no anger, no correction, no echo of the man she remembered. Just this, I didn't need to. I was already gone. Then I hit send, opened the contact, blocked the number. No dramatic monologue, no moral high ground, no final conversation over coffee or tears on a bench somewhere, just stillness and distance. It was never about the last word. It was about finally choosing silence that wouldn't be interrupted.